Hey everyone, it's Jeremy here with another JSN FM3 where I talk about three random things that are part of the JSDev environment that are part of how we can build widgets efficiently for FileMaker. I've got three new ones today: installing, importing many files, and compiling into one string. Now, these happen to go together in a nice sequence, so I thought I would, do these three together. It worked out really nicely. All right, let's take a look and see what we've got. We have a data tables like thing. It's actually a library called Tabulator that I'm using here over in FileMaker. I'm building the widget. It's got real data coming from FileMaker, and it's just a good old time. So this is almost ready to go. If this were the real data for my client, not quite yet, but this is almost ready. Over here in VS Code, we have our index file set up so that it can work with the library that is installed into this development environment, into this repository, into this widget. Over here in my package.json file, which describes everything about this file, about this widget, there is an object here called dependencies, and it contains one library called Tabulator Tables. That was installed. I installed that previously, and when I did that install, it ended up in this node modules folder. Make it a little bit bigger so we can see. It ended up in this node modules folder right, tabulator T, right here. So all the code that will run this library that's doing what's over there in FileMaker is in this node modules folder, and that was because I installed it. I didn't have to link to any content delivery network. I didn't have to put the actual code into a field. It's just all here. In fact, this would be really tough to get into a field. So I'm glad I didn't have to do that. So the install process works like this. I'm going to go ahead and do that because I need another JavaScript library to do some work. There's a JavaScript library out there called Moment.js, which handles working with dates. And I've got a date here. You can see kind of right above me, right there. Got a date there, and I want to do something with it. See if I can do something with it. So this, I'm going to install it, and I do that by saying goodbye to me. And over here in the terminal of VS Code in this project, I'll stop the server from running. It was running to let FileMaker do the work. I'm going to type in npm install moment. This is a process that will go up to the internet, find the Moment.js library in the npm.js site, and install it into my project. So let's watch that happen, and then we'll notice two things. Here we go. So it did that. It says it added one package. You can see there right at the bottom, and it audited a bunch of packages. There we go. It did two other things, which I really like. This process added that library to the package JSON. So now we can see that it's in there, and it's a library that is one of the dependencies. And it added that to the node modules folder. There it is. There's all the files that are necessary for it. All right, good. So the development environment is set up, not in any magical way, but it's set up to allow you to install any JavaScript libraries into it. It gets installed into one place, it gets recorded, and then in the next section, we'll talk about how to import it or use what's inside of our project. We now can look at, what can we look at? Importing. Importing this library. I've got Moment.js inside of my project. We can see it in two places, the node modules folder and in the dependencies. And now I can use it. Right now, it's not being used. And if I were to compile this and send this over to FileMaker, none of the Moment.js library would be part of the string because it's not imported. The JSDev environment and pretty much every website that is built when developers are working on it do what we call an import process. They use a command at the very top of the file where they want their the library to be, and they import the different libraries. So here we've already imported the tabulator full library. We're giving it a new variable name, tabulator, and we're directing where it came from. This simply means from the tabulator tables library that is inside of the node modules folder. This whole import process just knows where to find it. And I can do the same thing with moment. I can type in import moment from moment. Okay? Now, what's happening in both of these cases is the entirety of the library is being put into the variable that's part of this. I could say import moment as date config, whatever I wanted to. And this might work. Actually, I got to do this. I would never, I don't know if I would ever do this, but this is a setup I could say. Whatever library we're trying to access, we're targeting, we can import it and put it into a variable. So I'm just going to get rid of that and do this. Now, you can see that there are two different ways that the import is happening. This one is contained in curly braces. This one is not. And that's simply because I think in the top one, we're reassigning the library to a new variable. Here, we're not doing it. So now this library, the Moment.js library, is part of this project, and I can start to use it. I can start to use it in my work. All right. Now, the import method doesn't just, it's not all about whole JavaScript libraries. It can be about simple things like an array of objects. Here I have in this setup. Let me npm start, get it started. By the way, when this I'll explain it in a minute here. All right, so this columns option contains all of the columns that I want displayed over here in FileMaker. Okay, now this is a lot of space. It's taking up a lot of room. I'm going to go ahead and move all of this out of this file. So I'm going to just put an empty array there for the moment. And I'll create a new file inside of my source folder called columns.js. And then I will use another command called, I will create a variable. So const columns equals, and paste that in. So my columns are now defined inside of this separate file called columns. And I can do all the work in here that I need to do. And then at the bottom, when I need them in the other file, I can export them out. So I'll say export default columns. This is what you can't see. So there we go. Now you can see it. Export default columns. How about I go over here? There you go. Hi. Hi. All right. So export default columns will now make this variable available to any file in my repository, in my project. So I've got it there. I've exported it. And now I can come over here and say import columns from columns. Now, this file, columns, is not in the node modules folder. So it looks a little bit different. We actually have to write the path for it. Luckily, VS Code is pretty smart. It can help us find it and put it in there. So now this variable is available and I can put it down here. If I run this, before I set this, if I run this, let's see. Let's try this again. I think it must be a, what's happening here? Oh, I haven't saved it, that's why. Okay. So right now the columns are empty. So if I do that, I get nothing because there are no columns that are part of this project. I've imported them, now I can use them. So I'll just replace this empty array with that, save it, save it, save it. And when I do that, voila, there are my columns again. I can go over to this external file and make any change, like move the company name clear down to the bottom and save it. And then that's exactly what happens. So I've exported them from here. I've imported them into here. This just saves a whole lot of space in the main file where the work is being done, and allows me to separate by concerns the different functions, the different variables, and so forth. In fact, I love doing this. I will typically have a utils file in here that contains functions that I need to use in the main file in the index.js to manipulate the data somehow. For example, I could do this. I could say, I'm going to import moment from moment. So I'm going to use moment in this file. And then I'll say, let's see, const define, let's see, set month name or get month name equals, and we're going to bring in a date, and we're going to just use this function, this function from moment, because it's part of this file, and then I will export this, export get month name. Okay. Let's just check something here. I'm just going to, yeah, I think it wants us to do this. So export const, there we go. We'll do it that way. So I'm now exporting the month name function, and I can bring it over here. So import get month name from utils, and then I can take this and say data dot for each, take a row, and just do a quick, yeah, there we go. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm updating the date last active field to use the function that came from the utils file. So let's see if that works. I have no idea if it'll work. There we go. So now I'm manipulating the date and showing the month name, and I'm doing that because I'm using a function that is in a separate file. So that is the import process. All right. The third part of this today is simply that and this is kind of unique to the development environment, when I need to deploy this to FileMaker, I can do so, and I've got it set up in here to compile all of this into one string. FileMaker needs one string inside of a field or someplace where the entire HTML code is set so that the web viewer can read from that field in whatever method. This development environment does that. Let me show you the process down here at the bottom. You can see, I'll bring it up. Actually, I'll clear this. npm run deploy to FM. This will run a little script, a function inside of the development environment that will bundle all the code up and then bring it over here into FileMaker. And now you can see all of the code that is used in this project is in this one file. I don't know what any of this means. It's hard to read. It's going to be, I wouldn't even try to parse it. But now this FileMaker widget, I got to tell it what to look for. It needs to look for new data tables. So I'll go into my load script and update the widget name to that. All right, so let's run this again. Load widget, it's going to grab the code, and there it is. Notice a couple of things. Notice that the columns are part of the string that was loaded into the web viewer. Notice that function was loaded into the web viewer as well and is used. And that's because of these imports. All of these imports are bringing in all of the code from the separate files, the libraries, the functions, the variables, stuffing it into one continuous string that can be then put into a FileMaker field. Notice one other thing. I only have one field here. For all of the libraries that I'm using Tabulator, I'm using Moment.js, I've got those columns variables, I got the month name function. I'm using at least 4 different, plus my HTML. I'm using a lot of different pieces of code, but they're all strung together as one. I don't have to worry about having separate fields for each library or for each function or whatnot. It's all in there. So that's what the JS Dev environment does. That's what the JS in FM idea is about. It's about helping you be efficient with your widget building using the modern tools of JavaScript. Here we took a look at installing libraries, importing libraries and variables and functions from different places, and we also talked about compiling it into one stream. So there you go. That is more about the JS Dev environment. Please take some time to study this, ask questions in the comments or in the JSFM community. I look forward to hearing from you. Please also like and subscribe this video so that others can see it. Spread it to your friends as well. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.